Before You Buy, the show where we give you some straight-up gameplay and our first impressions of the latest games releasing. Hi, folks, it's Falcon. Let's talk about Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Rita's Rewind. Streets of Rage 4 may have gotten the ball rolling, but the game that's truly inspired the next generation of beat-em-ups has got to be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's the game that set the formula. Take a nostalgic 80s and 90s property and make a colorful, easygoing arcade adventure out of it. Now, Shredder's Revenge obviously had precedent back in 1991. There was Turtles in Time, which very much set the pace back in 1991 for this type of comic or children's TV crossover. I mean, even back then in the early 90s. That was an arcade game. It got ported all over the place. There was a straight SNES port. There was a Genesis port that changed a bunch of things to try to make it enough of a different game that Genesis had something exclusive, etc., etc. Anyways, here we are back in a situation where we've got this same kind of thing going on. As good as Shredder's Revenge was, a lot of these are not. And there are a lot of them. Like the Karate Kid one or the G.I. Joe one really aren't that great. So let me just say right off the top here that Rita's Rewind is one of the better ones. It's not as good as Shredder's Revenge. Not going to say it is. But if you're a beat-em-up fan, there is a lot to like here, and there are a few fun twists on the usual formula. Now, to make a good nostalgia bait beat-em-up, there's two essential elements. The graphics need to look old but feel high quality, like the sprite work has to be detailed and readable no matter how chaotic things get, and the music's gotta be great. Good music is essential for a fun beat-em-up. Even if the controls are awesome, it feels smooth as butter. You got a crappy soundtrack, it's real hard to get hyped in the way that these games are supposed to hype you up. And guess what? On those two counts, it nails it. They also hit all the right nostalgia buttons. If you grew up on the Power Rangers, this game is going to be a blast of endorphins to your brain. It'll unlock long-forgotten memories of the dumbest, weirdest, random bits of nonsense from that show. Yes, Bulk and Skull are here, and yes, they do play the music every time you talk to them. If you say the words Bulk and Skull, I hear that music. We didn't even have to play this game. But here's the thing. I don't think I need to explain what this game is. You see it, you know what you're getting. Just to be thorough, though, Power Rangers Rita's Rewind is a classic belt-scrolling 2D arcade action game. You go through 15 stages split into 5 chapters, marching forward and beating the snot out of any poor putty patrol standing in your way. Some stages end with bosses that you have to beat up more, and it goes on like that till the credits. Simple premise, but when done well, it's extremely satisfying. These types of games are best played co-op, so I did manage to wrangle a buddy for this review. Good old-fashioned couch co-op of a beat-em-up is nothing better. At least that's how it should be. I definitely recommend the couch co-op, playing this game with a friend, but I also kind of don't because there are complications, and let's get into that. One big issue with this game is currently the amount of people you can play with. The whole deal with the Power Rangers, there's 5, well, 6. You unlock the Green Ranger after beating the game, but at least on PlayStation where I played the game, there's no way to actually play with all 5 Rangers at the same time. This makes the multiplayer situation kind of confusing, so let's tear the band-aid off right now. Currently, you're limited to 2 players, and right now, the only 2 versions of the game that can play online are PlayStation and Steam. 5-player local co-op is supported on anything that is not PlayStation, which for some reason limits co-op to 4 players, which is just some kind of hard rule with Sony for whatever reason. For the Xbox and Switch, they are planning on getting the online version up and running. It's not available at launch yet, apparently going to get patched in a few weeks. And for all versions, full online co-op with all the Rangers is coming eventually. It's a confusing launch that makes it look like the game's coming in hot, but at least in my experience, it's not buggy or anything. It all functions properly, and at least playing local co-op, I ran into no issues with the game on a technical level. The gameplay is mostly solid. The simple act of punching through a horde of enemies feels great. The sound effects are crunchy as far as these games go, and this one is actually impressively authentic to the arcade experience, more than these usually go. There's a few CRT filters I turned off for the review, but the default one's fine. It's subtle enough not to be distracting. The sprites have a little more of that grungy mid-90s look rather than super slick modern sprites like Splinter's Revenge. I think that's good. The voice acting's perfect. It has that tinny, hollow, bit-crushed sound, very 11 kilohertz rather than 22 or 44 sounding, very era appropriate. It's also stupid, but I really couldn't help but laugh. It's actually really funny how intentionally crappy the voices sound, and that's a compliment. I like that. If there's one negative I can give about the presentation, it's that the levels are a little generic. They're not bursting with detail like in a lot of other beat-em-ups. They do at least cover memorable Power Rangers locations. Like, they know what they're doing starting the game off in a quarry. If this was was really accurate, half of the game would just be the quarry level. But there's city streets, there's a park, the Angel Grove nuclear waste dump, which, let's be serious, there aren't nuclear waste dumps like that. But this was the 90s, right? As for the bosses, there's a good selection. They're drawn from the more popular monsters of the early days of the show. Good lineup, but where's Pudgy Pig? Where's the Pumpkin Rapper or King Sphinx? Yeah, they did bring in some of the cooler designs and a few amusing goofballs like Chunky Chicken, but I speak for everyone. It would have been literally perfect to have a Pumpkin Rapper stage, like with an anti-Power Rangers diss track playing over it. Come on. Little idea for the sequel, guys. No need to credit me on that one. There is a plot, almost forgot to mention. So the premise is that Robo Rita, which is Rita Repulsa from the future, might I add, just so you know, she goes back in time to assist original Flavor Rita from the 90s to help her defeat the Power Rangers. So while this game is mostly drawing from Season 1 stuff, they do bring in elements